what happens when you take a blanket and paper towels and add it to your basic scrunch muck dye? We're gonna find out today, and we're gonna get pullover hoodie and a full zip, because let's face it, both are awesome. Sometimes though, a zip is easier to get on. My name is Nate, and as always, I'm going to do my best to keep track of all the details to share with you. Let's dive into this. All right, so these hoodies have been soaking in soda ash solution for quite a bit, and I then wrung them out till damp, and I put them in a plastic bag until I'm ready to use them. It makes it much easier for me to coordinate my projects. Now, I can't stress the importance of a simple step before you do all of that, and that is pre-washing your fabric. This is a huge, big thing to do. My old boss would call this a TNT skill. It takes no talent. We all know how to do laundry. It's basic, but it's critical. Why? Because it removes those factory softeners and oils, so the dye has nothing in the way of it bonding with the cotton. That also means no dryer sheets. Now, for our subject, we have two different hoodies that we're gonna dye today. This first one is a zip-up hoodie. It's from Independent Trading, and it is a mid-weight 80-20 cotton poly blend. Now, 80-20, you might be worried, where's that 20%? Well, the face, the outer shell of this hoodie is 100% cotton. So that's a good thing for us, because that outer shell is gonna take dye perfectly. It's just the inside of the hoodie is going to be a little bit frosted, and it's going to take no dye, and that's totally fine. Now, the other hoodie we're going to see here in a second is a pullover, and that's from Port & Company, and it's a prepared for dye hoodie, which means there's no chemical whiteners, and it includes cotton thread. It's the same construction, 80-20 cotton poly, and yeah, so this is going to be great. Now, you can see here what I'm doing is I'm using the polyester blanket to create a structure for those valleys and the peaks, so that there's a little bit more space between them. And here I thought I was going to do this before putting it in the muck container. You'll see here, I'm like, oh, I'll use a tape to kind of keep it together to then put, because at first I was going to just do one, but that didn't work out, and I scrapped that fairly quickly. So I called an audible and moved the scrunching to the muck container. And this is where I then really focused on creating the nooks and crannies with that structure, with the polyester, to create the dynamics. And what I mean by that is I'm trying to create a very big differential between the peak and the bottom, the valley. And I'm doing this in the muck to get those intense colors. And so I first did this, and I saw all this extra space, and I decided to do it all over again with the other hoodie. So we're gonna see that here in a second. Now, the idea of so much space between the peaks and the valleys, it's gonna make the dye split more. It's going to force the dye to split, because to get to the valley, to get to the bottom, the dye has to travel farther, and it's scrunched, kind of pushed together. So some dye is not going to want to travel as much as the other dye. Now, as you see, what I'm doing here is I am ensuring that I get that blanket while I scrunch the hoodie. Now, with the pullover, while I was doing this, it's very different than the zip up, because the zip up is one layer going across. With the hoodie, well, there's a front and the back, and I can't separate them. And so I decided to do the front facing down with the back up. And I was kind of curious, well, how is this going to impact the dye splitting? Because now, to get to the front of the hoodie, the dye has to travel through the back of the hoodie. So that's going to be a very interesting thing. We're kind of doing two different experiments here that we're going to see, and we'll talk about at the very end. All right, friends, as you can see here, I'm going to be putting paper towels, and I'm kind of poking them into the valleys. Not really going crazy. I'm going to just do my best. The goal here is less to mirror the top of the fold exactly, but just to give it a little bit of a structure. Now, the reason I'm using this paper towel technique is it's going to be a small buffer against dye spotting and dye burning, just a little bit. But really, it's going to help me wick the dye. It's going to, because that paper is going to absorb that water super fast and start moving it over the fabric, and it'll just help create a much smoother flow and just effortless looking flow for the dye splits. That's the goal. That's what I'm hoping for. I think it worked, but we'll talk more about it. I am going to use a soda ash spray here as a pro move. It helps the paper towel form fit to the folds a little bit. Again, I'm not trying to go crazy, just trying to kind of poke it into the valleys just a little bit, not all the way to the bottom. And when the dye hits that damp paper, it accepts the dye color immediately and starts traveling exactly to where we want it. Now, I've pre-weighed about 20 grams of dye so I can gauge my application, because once you add the dye to that ice, you can't take it back. And so I started off with 20 grams. I ended up using a lot more than that because I needed to do that. And I also made an audible here because I was just going to do both of them Plum Blossom. And instead, what I did is I did one Plum Blossom and the other one Mindbender X. And I'm so happy I did that because everyone seems to really love how the Mindbender X turned out. Now you might be thinking, why am I doing dye over ice versus dye under ice here? Well, dye under ice is critical when we're trying to keep the dye localized to a certain area, which is good, say for a spiral, and you're trying to keep the dye in it, for the most part, just splitting with its neighbors in a pizza-shaped slice. Here, I'm doing one dye for the whole thing, and I'm trying to get color splits. And so as the dye melts or dissolves into the ice, the different dye molecules, the underlying components, are going to dissolve at different times and start flowing at different times, and it'll help encourage the dye to split. Now, at the very end, what I'm going to be doing is I am going to add a little bit more soda ash and a little bit of glauber salt for a couple reasons. One, we need that pH to stay high around 11, and so adding all this fresh ice that has a neutral pH, I just want to make it higher. Now, the glauber salt, my understanding with that is in a muck dye situation, it helps force the dye out of the muck solution and into the fabric, especially for the blues. That's my understanding. It seems to work. I like it. Now, the other thing is, do not move that muck container or you're going to ruin all the patterns and the dye flows that you're working so hard to achieve. Watching the ice melt is just fascinating. It's fun to come back every 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes just to see what the new color is going to be. From the very beginning to the very end, it's constantly changing. While this melts, a huge thank you to my subscribers. And if you're enjoying this deep dive, which I hope you are, hit that subscribe button. Let me know with a comment your thoughts. I love to hear from everyone and do my best to respond to all your comments in earnest. Now, this is the hardest part of tie-dyeing in general, and that is the weight. And that's because these reactive dyes are not a temporary, staining of your shirt or the fabric. We are chemically changing the structure of the cotton to be colorful. And that's why they're called reactive dyes, and it takes time and temperature. The hotter it is, the less time you need. Now, because I'm not moving these, and these are going to be at 63 degrees Fahrenheit in my basement in the winter, I let it batch, which is what we call it, for 48 hours after the ice has melted. Now, I used 24 pounds of ice, right? I added an extra bag. That took a day and a half to melt. And so overall, 48, it took like 4 days for this project. Again, the waiting is the worst part. Let's look at the results and let's think about what we did to get these. Specifically, we used a polyester blanket to help create beautiful dye flows, and also a paper towel on top to encourage the dye to flow, as well as to avoid burns and spotting. And when I look at this first zip-up hoodie, it was scrunched on zip, and the front and back, they're perfectly even, and it is gorgeous. My wife already, quote unquote, borrowed this one indefinitely. I thought it was going to be mine, but I guess that didn't happen. And we could see these dye flows just look effortlessly. and just smooth and just graceful. I love this one, and I will definitely be getting more of these hoodies and doing this exact one again. Now let's look at the pullover. And this is a great lesson in how dye travels, because my concern from earlier is somewhat justified, because the front, I think, is a little bit lighter than the back, and that's because that purple didn't travel as far through the muck, leaving behind those beautiful blues and yellows on the front. I love this one. The back is a little bit darker with more of the purple settled in, and I actually prefer this and think this looks deep and really complex, and I love this one. It just goes to show you the muck is not that scary. All right, friends, on to the next one.